The Seattle skyline shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sarah Whitaker's corner office, a sleek space on the 32nd floor of the Columbia Center. At 30, Sarah was a senior investment advisor at Cascade Wealth Management, her name whispered in boardrooms as the steady hand who could turn volatile markets into predictable gains. Her colleagues called her the reliable one, a moniker she wore like a badge, though it weighed heavier than anyone knew. Outside the glass, the Puget Sound sparkled under a rare October sun, but Sarah's eyes were fixed on the spreadsheet glowing on her monitor, a meticulous breakdown of her personal finances, eroded by years of family demands. Sarah leaned back in her ergonomic chair, her auburn hair pulled into a neat chignon, and rubbed her temples. The numbers didn't lie. Over $50,000, 0 cents in debt, none of it hers. There was the $22.00 she'd wired to cover her father's failed real estate venture in Tacoma, a strip mall that never materialized, another $15.00 to settle her mother's department store credit cards, racked up on designer handbags and imported linens Clara Whitaker swore were investments in appearances, and then the $13.00 for her sister Tara's college tuition after Tara lost her scholarship to late-night parties and missed deadlines. Sarah had paid it all, driven by the mantra she'd internalized since childhood. Family sticks together, but as she stared at the red ink on her screen, a quiet question gnawed at her. When does family stop taking and start giving back? No one in the Whitaker family ever asked if Sarah was okay. Not her father, Victor, with his charming smile and endless sure-thing business pitches. Not her mother, Clara, whose polished exterior hid a knack for turning guilt into currency. And certainly not Tara, whose boutique in Capitol Hill had bled Sarah's savings dry before shuttering 6 months ago. Sarah was the anchor, the one who held the family afloat when storms hit. But anchors don't float. They sink. Her phone buzzed on the desk, snapping her out of her thoughts. A text from Clara lit up the screen. "Dear Sarah, please come to the house at 7 o'clock tonight. We have something special planned for you. Love, Mom." Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her stomach tightening. Clara's special invitations were rarely innocent. The last time she'd used that word, Sarah had been roped into co-signing a $30,000 0 cents loan for Tara's boutique, a decision that left Sarah working overtime to cover the payments when Tara's business collapsed. She typed a quick reply, "I'll be there," and set the phone down, her mind already racing. What do they want now? The rest of the day passed in a blur of client meetings and portfolio reviews, but the text lingered like a shadow. By 6:30 p.m., Sarah was in her silver Audi Q5, navigating the winding roads toward her parents' lakeside home in Mercer Island. The house, a modern 2-story with cedar siding and expansive windows, was a testament to Sarah's financial sacrifices. She'd covered the down payment 4 years ago after Victor's latest venture, a craft brewery, tanked, leaving the family on the brink of foreclosure. The title, of course, was in her parents' names. Family sticks together, she reminded herself, but the words felt hollow tonight. As she pulled into the driveway, the house glowed with warm light, the faint hum of laughter spilling through the windows. Sarah parked behind a row of familiar cars, Uncle Ray's vintage Mustang, Aunt Linda's Lexus, and Tara's beat-up Jeep, still sporting a bumper sticker from her boutique days. The presence of extended family set Sarah's nerves on edge. The Whitakers weren't the type to gather unless there was something to gain: cash, favors, or, in Sarah's case, another piece of her stability. She stepped out, smoothing her navy blazer and adjusting the scarf around her neck. The autumn air carried the scent of pine and lake water, a fleeting moment of calm before she rang the doorbell. The door swung open, and Clara stood there, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, her lips painted a bold crimson. "Sarah, darling," she squealed, pulling her into a perfumed embrace. "You're here?" "Wouldn't miss it," Sarah said, forcing a smile as she stepped inside. The living room was packed, a sea of faces she hadn't seen since the last family Christmas 3 years ago. Uncle Ray with his booming laugh and whiskey glass, Aunt Linda fussing over a tray of hors d'oeuvres, Tara scrolling on her phone in the corner, her platinum highlights catching the chandelier's glow. Even Cousin Ethan, who only showed up when there was money to be sniffed out, was there, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Surprise!" The room erupted in unison. "Happy early anniversary, Sarah!" Sarah blinked, her smile faltering. "Anniversary?" she echoed, glancing at Clara. "For 10 years at Cascade Wealth," Clara said, her eyes sparkling a little too brightly. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Come, sit." She guided Sarah to the center of the room where a plush sectional sofa waited like a stage. Victor, her father, appeared with a cocktail in hand, his silver hair slicked back, his grin as wide as ever. "Your favorite cucumber martini," he said, pressing the glass into her hand. Sarah stared at the drink. "I haven't had martinis since grad school, Dad. You know I prefer red wine." Victor's grin didn't waver. "Well, tonight's a celebration. Drink up." She set the glass on the coffee table, her eyes scanning the room. The laughter felt rehearsed, the smiles too eager. Her gaze landed on a sleek leather folder resting on a side table, its edges embossed with gold. It looked out of place among the cheese platters and wine bottles, too formal for a family party. "What's this all about, Mom?" she asked, keeping her tone light. Clara waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, just some boring paperwork. We'll get to it later. Tonight's about you." She turned to the crowd, raising her voice. "To Sarah, our shining star." The room echoed with clinks of glasses, but Sarah's unease deepened. She sat on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, as relatives peppered her with questions about her job, her clients, her glamorous life. But their eyes kept darting to the folder, and Sarah's instincts screamed that this wasn't about her anniversary at all. "Mind if I take a look at that paperwork now?" she said, reaching for the folder before Clara could protest. The room stilled. Clara's smile tightened. "Sweetheart, let's not spoil the mood with business." "It's okay," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "I'd like to know what's so special about tonight." She flipped open the folder, her eyes scanning the first page. The title hit her like a punch. Wealth Transfer Agreement, Evelyn Pierce Legacy Trust. Her grandmother Evelyn, who'd passed away 2 years ago, had left Sarah a substantial inheritance, a trust meant to secure her future, but the document in her hands was something else entirely. "Sarah, it's just a formality," Clara said quickly, placing a hand on her arm. "For tax purposes, you know how complicated estates can be." Sarah's eyes locked on a single line. "I, Sarah Elizabeth Whitaker, hereby relinquish all rights to the Evelyn Pierce Legacy Trust." Her heart thudded in her chest. "Tax purposes?" she said, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. "Or transferring everything to the family without telling me?" Tara looked up from her phone, her face pale. "Sarah, don't make this a thing. We all agreed it's for the best." "Agreed?" Sarah's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. "When was I part of that conversation, Tara? Or was this party the plan to trick me into signing?" Victor stood, raising his glass as if to diffuse the tension. "A toast to Sarah, the heart of this family," he said. His voice rushed, but Sarah wasn't listening. She flipped to the next page, her eyes catching phrases like reallocation to family trust and managed by Victor and Clara Whitaker. It was clear. They wanted her inheritance, every cent of it. "Dad, Mom," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Why would you do this? If this was really about Grandma's estate, why not talk to me honestly?" Clara's smile vanished, replaced by a steely glare. "Sarah, don't make a scene. Everyone's here." "Then let everyone hear it," Sarah said, closing the folder and placing it on her lap. "They deserve to know what this party's really about." She looked around the room, at the faces she'd known her whole life. Uncle Ray avoiding her gaze, Aunt Linda fidgeting with her necklace, Ethan staring at his shoes. The air was thick, the silence deafening. Sarah stood, the folder clutched in her hand. "I'm not signing anything tonight," she said, her voice ringing with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. "And I'm not the naive girl you can guilt into fixing your problems anymore." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Victor cleared his throat, his charm faltering. "Sarah, let's talk this over privately." "No," Sarah interrupted, her eyes locked on her mother's. "You wrote the script for this evening, Mom, but I'm not playing the part." She turned to the door, her scarf trailing behind her like a flag of defiance. As she stepped into the cool night air, the laughter and clinking glasses faded, replaced by the soft lapping of the lake against the shore. She climbed into her car, her hands trembling as she gripped the steering wheel. The folder sat on the passenger seat, a tangible reminder of the betrayal she'd just uncovered. Sarah didn't cry. She was too angry for tears. Instead, she pulled out her phone and texted Mia, her best friend since college. "Can you meet me? I need to talk." Mia's reply was instant. "On my way. Where are you?" "Lakeside Cafe," Sarah typed, starting the engine. As she drove away from the house, the golden lights of her parents' home receded in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, Sarah felt something new stirring inside her. Not guilt, not duty, but a spark of resolve. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone, and she sure as hell wouldn't let her family rewrite her future. The Lakeside Cafe was a cozy spot tucked along the shores of Lake Washington, its wooden deck strung with fairy lights that danced on the water's surface. Sarah sat at a corner table, nursing a glass of Pinot Noir, the folder open in front of her. She'd read the document 3 times, each line fueling her anger. It wasn't just about the money. Though Evelyn's trust was worth millions, a legacy from her years building Evelyn and Pierce a boutique investment firm, it was about trust, or the lack of it. Her family hadn't just assumed she'd sign. They'd orchestrated a performance to ensure it. Mia slid into the chair across from her, her dark curls bouncing as she set down 2 steaming mugs of chamomile tea. "Okay, spill," she said, her brown eyes narrowing. "You look like you just walked out of a soap opera." Sarah pushed the folder toward her. "They threw me a fake anniversary party to trick me into signing away Grandma's trust." Mia's jaw dropped as she scanned the document. "This is... Wow. They really thought you'd just sign this without reading it?" "They've been banking on my loyalty for years," Sarah said, her voice low. "I've paid for Dad's bad investments, Mom's shopping sprees, Tara's failures. They figured I'd keep saying yes." Mia leaned back, whistling softly. "This is next level. What's your next move?" Sarah sipped her wine, the tartness grounding her. "I don't know yet, but Grandma Evelyn was sharp. She wouldn't have left me this trust without a plan. There's got to be something else, a letter, a video, something to protect me." Mia nodded, her expression fierce. "Then we find it. You're not doing this alone, Sarah. And honestly, it's about time you stopped being their ATM." Sarah managed a small smile, the first genuine one all night. Mia was right. She wasn't alone. And as she looked out at the lake, its surface rippling under the moonlight, she felt a shift inside her. The reliable one was done playing by her family's rules. Whatever Evelyn had left her, Sarah would find it, and when she did, she'd make sure her family learned that loyalty wasn't a blank check. The silence in the Whitaker family's lakeside living room was suffocating, a stark contrast to the forced cheer that had filled it moments ago. Sarah Whitaker stood in the center of the room, the leather-bound folder clutched in her hands like a shield. The wealth transfer agreement, a document that would strip her of her grandmother Evelyn Pierce's legacy trust, lay open on her lap, its words searing into her mind. "I, Sarah Elizabeth Whitaker, hereby relinquish all right." Her family's eyes were on her, a mix of guilt, defiance, and avoidance. But Sarah's gaze was fixed on her mother, Clara, whose crimson lips were pressed into a tight line. "Sarah, sweetheart," Clara said, her voice syrupy but sharp. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just estate planning. You know how complicated these things are." She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, her perfume, a cloying mix of jasmine and ambition, filling the air. Sarah's laugh was low, bitter. "Estate planning? Or a plan to take everything Grandma Evelyn left me?" She held up the folder, its embossed edges glinting under the chandelier. "This doesn't say protect Sarah's future. It says hand it all to you." The room froze. Uncle Ray, sprawled on an armchair with his whiskey glass, stared at the floor. Aunt Linda, clutching a napkin, fidgeted as if she could unravel the tension with her fingers. Tara, Sarah's younger sister, scrolled furiously on her phone, her platinum highlights hiding her face. Even Cousin Ethan, whose grin had been predatory all evening, shifted uncomfortably on the couch. The surprise anniversary party for Sarah's 10 years at Cascade Wealth Management was unraveling, and everyone knew it. Victor, Sarah's father, stood abruptly, his silver hair catching the light. "Let's not ruin a good night," he said, raising his glass with a salesman's charm. "To Sarah, the heart of this family." "No," Sarah said, her voice slicing through his toast. "No toasts, Dad. Not until you explain why you thought I'd sign away my inheritance without a fight." Clara's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of anger. "Sarah, don't make a scene. Everyone's here. Let's keep the peace." "Peace?" Sarah's eyes narrowed, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You call this peace? Throwing a fake party to trick me into giving up what Grandma left me? That's not peace, Mom. That's a setup." Tara finally looked up, her blue eyes wide with panic. "Sarah, come on. It's not like that. We need to manage things better for all of us." "For all of us?" Sarah's voice rose sharp enough to make Ethan flinch. "When have you ever thought about me, Tara? When I paid your tuition after you partied your scholarship away? Or when I bailed out your boutique only for you to blow the money on custom signage and influencer brunches?" Tara's face reddened, but she said nothing, her fingers tightening around her phone. Sarah turned to Victor, whose grin had faded. "And you, Dad, $50,000 in debts from your Sure Thing ventures. I paid every cent and you never once asked if I was drowning." Victor opened his mouth, but Sarah cut him off, her gaze shifting to Clara. "And you, Mom, your department store bills, your investment handbags? $15,000, 0 cents. I'll never see again. You didn't even thank me. You just assumed I'd keep paying because that's what I do, right? I'm the reliable one." The room was a graveyard of silence, the only sound the faint lapping of Lake Washington against the shore outside. Sarah felt like a stranger in the home she'd helped save, the walls lined with framed photos of family vacations she'd funded, the furniture she'd replaced after Victor's brewery went bust. These were the people she'd sacrificed for, and now they were trying to take the one thing that was truly hers. Clara took a step forward, her voice low, almost pleading. "Sarah, you're being selfish. We're family. We share everything." "Selfish?" Sarah's laugh was raw, echoing in the stillness. "I've shared enough. My savings, my time, my peace. But this," she held up the folder, "this is where I draw the line." She turned to the door, her scarf trailing behind her like a banner of defiance. Clara's voice followed, sharp and desperate. "If you walk out, Sarah, you're turning your back on us." Sarah paused, her hand on the doorknob, but she didn't look back. "No, Mom, you turned your back on me the moment you planned this." She stepped into the cool October night, the door closing softly behind her, leaving the muffled voices of her family to fade into the darkness. The lakeside cafe was a haven of warmth, its wooden deck strung with fairy lights that reflected on the lake's glassy surface. Sarah sat at a corner table, the folder open in front of her, its pages dog-eared from her repeated readings. Her glass of Pinot Noir sat untouched, the wine's ruby hue catching the glow of a nearby candle. She'd texted Mia Delgado, her best friend since their days at the University of Washington, and now she waited, her mind replaying the confrontation like a looped reel. Mia burst through the door 10 minutes later, her dark curls bouncing, her leather jacket slung over one shoulder. "Okay, what the hell happened?" she said, sliding into the chair across from Sarah. "Your text sounded like you just survived a hostage situation." Sarah pushed the folder toward her. "They threw me a fake party to trick me into signing away Grandma Evelyn's trust." Mia's eyes widened as she flipped through the document, her fingers pausing on the relinquishment clause. "This is diabolical. They really thought you'd just sign this without reading it?" "They've been banking on my loyalty for years," Sarah said, her voice low. "I've paid for Dad's flops, Mom's shopping sprees, Tara's failures. They figured I'd keep saying yes." Mia leaned back, whistling softly. "This is some Machiavellian-level scheming. Clara's got nerve, I'll give her that." She closed the folder, her expression fierce. "What's your next move?" Sarah sipped her wine, the tartness grounding her. "I don't know yet, but Grandma Evelyn was a strategist. She built Evelyn and Pierce from a one-room office into a New England powerhouse. She wouldn't have left me this trust without safeguards. There's got to be something. A letter, a video, something to protect me." Mia nodded, her eyes glinting with determination. "Then we find it." "You're not doing this alone, Sarah, and honestly, it's time you stopped being their financial punching bag." Sarah managed a small smile, her first since the party. Mia's unwavering support was a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone saw her as a means to an end. "Thanks, Mia. I need to figure out what Evelyn wanted me to do." Mia reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You will. And when you do, you're going to make them regret underestimating you." As they sat by the lake, the fairy lights swaying in the breeze, Sarah felt a spark of resolve ignite inside her. The folder on the table wasn't just a betrayal, it was a challenge, and Sarah Whitaker was done backing down. The next morning, Sarah woke to the soft patter of rain against her apartment windows in Belltown. Her one bedroom was modest, a far cry from the lakeside mansion she'd helped her parents keep. The walls were lined with bookshelves, a mix of finance textbooks and novels, and a single framed photo of her and Evelyn sat on the coffee table. Sarah at 16, laughing as Evelyn taught her to fish on a Maine dock. That was the Evelyn she remembered. Sharp, warm, and fiercely protective. A woman who'd built an empire and never let family drama cloud her judgment. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled to the last email Evelyn had sent her, a week before her death. "Dear Sarah, if things ever feel tangled, go see my attorney, Arthur Klein. I left something for you. Love, Grandma." The words had seemed cryptic at the time, but now they felt like a lifeline. Sarah dialed the number for Klein & Associates, a boutique law firm in downtown Seattle known for handling high-profile estates. A crisp voice answered. "Klein & Associates, this is Emily." "Hi, Emily, this is Sarah Whitaker. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Arthur Klein regarding Evelyn Pierce's estate." There was a pause, then a rustle of papers. "Miss Whitaker, Mr. Klein has an opening at 10:00 a.m. tomorrow. Does that work?" "Perfect," Sarah said, her heart pounding. "I'll be there." She spent the rest of the day at Cascade Wealth, burying herself in client portfolios to keep her mind off the folder now locked in her desk drawer. But every quiet moment brought flashes of the party. Clara's forced smile, Victor's rushed toast, Tara's avoidance. By the time she left the office, the rain had turned to a drizzle, and Sarah drove to her meeting with Mia at a Capitol Hill diner, the kind of place with vinyl booths and bottomless coffee. Mia was already there, sketching on a napkin, a habit from her days as a graphic design major. "So," she said, sliding the napkin aside, "you're meeting the lawyer tomorrow?" Sarah nodded, stirring cream into her coffee. "Evelyn's email mentioned she left something for me. I'm hoping it's answers." "It better be," Mia said, leaning forward. "Your family's playing dirty. You need something to shut them down." Sarah traced the rim of her mug, her thoughts drifting to Evelyn. "Grandma always saw through people. She warned me about Mom's charms when I was a kid. Said Clara could sell ice to a glacier but never knew when to stop." Mia snorted. "Sounds about right. What about your dad? Victor's got that used car salesman vibe." "He's worse," Sarah said, her voice tight. "He makes you believe he's the victim, like every bad deal is just bad luck, and I kept bailing him out, thinking it'd fix things." Mia's expression softened. "You were trying to hold the family together. That's not your fault?" "Maybe," Sarah said, staring into her coffee, "but I'm done being their safety net." At 9:50 a.m. the next day, Sarah stepped into the offices of Klein & Associates, a sleek space in a historic red brick building overlooking Pike Place Market. The lobby smelled of polished wood and fresh coffee, and a receptionist led her to a conference room lined with law books and a mahogany table. Arthur Klein, a silver-haired man in his late 60s, greeted her with a firm handshake, his eyes kind but sharp. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I've been expecting you. Your grandmother was very clear about your role in her estate." Sarah's pulse quickened as she sat, smoothing her blazer. "She left me a message to see you if things got complicated. I think they have." Klein nodded, his expression unreadable. Evelyn was a meticulous woman. She foresaw challenges. He opened a drawer and pulled out a USB drive, its surface engraved with the initials EP. "She left this for you. A private video recording. There are also documents related to the Legacy Trust, which your family is now attempting to restructure." Sarah's breath caught. "A video? Can I watch it now?" "Of course." Klein plugged the USB into a laptop, and the screen flickered to life. Evelyn's face appeared, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes piercing despite the frailty of age. Her voice, warm but resolute, filled the room. "Sarah, if you're watching this, then things are unfolding as I feared," Evelyn began, her hands folded on a desk Sarah recognized from her grandmother's study. "You've always been the kindest of my grandchildren, the one who never asked for anything. That's why I left you the Legacy Trust, not because you need the money, but because you deserve it." Sarah's eyes burned, her hands clenching in her lap. Evelyn's voice grew firmer. "I saw how your mother, Clara, treated others, even me. She uses family as an excuse to take, cloaking it in sacrifice. Your father and sister are no better. The trust is yours alone, Sarah, to protect you from their greed." The screen shifted to a scanned document, the trust's original terms. Evelyn's voice continued. "There's a clause your family doesn't know about. If anyone tries to coerce you into forfeiting your rights, or if they challenge the trust legally, all assets will be redirected to 4 nonprofit organizations I've named, focused on financial education and abuse recovery." Sarah's jaw tightened, a mix of relief and anger surging through her. Klein paused the video, his voice calm. "Your family is unaware of this clause. If you give the word, I can activate it today." Sarah stared at the frozen image of Evelyn, her grandmother's fierce gaze a mirror of her own resolve. "Can I have a copy of the video?" she asked, her voice steady. Klein handed her a duplicate USB. "There's one more recording," he said, "meant for the family. Evelyn wanted it shown if they persisted." Sarah took the drive, her mind racing. A plan was forming, one that would turn her family's surprise party into her own reckoning. "I think it's time they saw it," she said, her voice low but firm. "All of them, together." Klein's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. Evelyn would approve. That evening, Sarah met Mia at a rooftop bar in South Lake Union, the city's skyline glittering below. The air was crisp, scented with rain and cedar, and Sarah clutched the USB in her coat pocket like a talisman. She recounted the meeting with Klein, her words tumbling out as Mia listened, her eyes wide. "You're going to show them the video?" Mia asked, sipping her gin and tonic. "Like call them out in front of everyone?" Sarah nodded, her jaw set. "I'm hosting a family meeting at my place tomorrow. I'll play Evelyn's message and let them see what they're up against." Mia grinned, raising her glass. "That's my girl. Your surprise party's about to become their surprise twist." Sarah's smile was small but fierce. They thought they could write the script. This time, I'm the one holding the pen. As they clinked glasses, the city lights shimmered like a promise. Sarah didn't know what her family would do next, but she knew one thing for certain. Evelyn had given her the tools to fight back, and Sarah was ready to use them. The Seattle skyline glittered beyond the windows of Sarah Whitaker's Belltown condo, a modest one-bedroom that felt like a fortress tonight. The living room, usually a cozy retreat with its bookshelves and soft gray sofa, had been transformed into a stage. A borrowed mini projector sat on a shelf, aimed at a blank wall that would serve as a screen. Beside it, a USB drive engraved with E.P. Evelyn Pierce's initials rested next to Sarah's laptop. Tomorrow, her family would gather here, expecting her to cave, to sign away her grandmother's legacy trust. But Sarah had other plans. She stood in the center of the room, rehearsing her words, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, her navy sweater a quiet contrast to the storm brewing inside her. The video from Evelyn, revealed by her attorney, Arthur Klein, had changed everything. It wasn't just proof that the trust was hers alone. It was a weapon, a clause that could redirect every cent to nonprofits if her family tried to coerce her. Tonight, Sarah wasn't the reliable one who paid their debts. She was the one writing the script. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, a text from Mia Delgado. "You ready for tomorrow? This is gonna be epic." Sarah smiled, typing back, "As ready as I'll ever be. Thanks for helping set up." Mia had been there all afternoon, rearranging furniture and testing the projector, her fierce loyalty a lifeline in the chaos of the past week. Sarah walked to the window, the city lights shimmering like a promise. She thought of Evelyn, her grandmother's sharp eyes and sharper mind, building Evelyn and Pierce from a single desk in Cambridge to a respected investment firm. Evelyn had seen through her family's greed, Clara's manipulation, Victor's schemes, Tara's entitlement, and left Sarah the tools to fight back. Tomorrow Sarah would use them. The next day, October's drizzle painted Seattle in shades of silver, but Sarah's condo was warm, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint citrus of her diffuser. She'd sent the texts last night, short and deliberate. "Family meeting at my place, 5:00 p.m. Let's resolve this peacefully." Clara's reply had been instant, dripping with false warmth. "Sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. Well, I'll be there." Sarah hadn't responded. She didn't need to. Clara thought she'd won, but the game was about to change. At 4:55 p.m., Sarah stood by the door, her heart pounding but her hands steady. She'd chosen a tailored blazer and jeans, professional yet grounded, a signal that she was in control. The projector was ready, the USB plugged in. Evelyn's video paused on the opening frame, her grandmother's silver hair pulled back, her eyes fierce behind wire-rimmed glasses. The doorbell rang, and Sarah opened it to find Clara, her blonde hair styled in soft waves, her beige dress impeccable, as if she were walking a runway. "Sarah, darling," she said, her crimson lips curving into a smile. "This is so thoughtful of you." "It's necessary," Sarah said, stepping aside. "Come in." Victor followed, his silver hair slicked back, his red tie a bold choice for a man who'd tried to steal his daughter's inheritance. Tara trailed behind, her platinum highlights catching the light, her eyes fixed on her phone. Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda arrived next, their greetings stilted, and Cousin Ethan brought up the rear, his grin noticeably dimmer than at the lakeside party. Sarah gestured to the sofa and armchairs arranged in a semicircle. "Take a seat, I have something to share." Clara's eyes flicked to the projector, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What's this about, Sarah? I thought we were here to talk." "We are," Sarah said, her voice calm but unyielding. "But first, you need to hear from someone else." She pressed play, and the wall lit up with Evelyn's image, her voice filling the room like a judge's gavel. "If you're watching this, it means Sarah refused to sign anything you brought her," Evelyn began, her tones steady but laced with steel. "I established the legacy trust for her alone because she's the only one who never demanded, never manipulated, and never disappointed me." Clara's smile vanished, her hands clenching in her lap. Victor shifted, his tie suddenly too tight. Tara's phone slipped to the cushion beside her, her eyes wide. Evelyn's voice continued, each word a hammer striking their facade. "The trust has 3 conditions. It's for Sarah's personal expenses, independent investments, or verified charities. If any of you try to coerce her or sue to claim it, 50% of the assets will be transferred to 4 nonprofits focused on financial education and abuse recovery." The room was a vacuum, the air sucked out by Evelyn's words. Sarah watched her family's faces, Clara's panic, Victor's deflection, Tara's avoidance, and felt a strange calm settle over her. She paused the video, stepping into the center of the room. "I know what you planned at the party," she said, her voice ringing clear. "You thought I'd sign away everything because I've always been the one to fix your messes. But Grandma saw you for who you are, and she made sure I'd be protected." Clara shot to her feet, her voice trembling. "This is absurd, Sarah. You're blowing this out of proportion. Everything we did was for the family." "For the family?" Sarah's laugh was sharp, cutting through Clara's protest. "Was it for the family when you ran up $15,000, 0 cents on your credit cards and let me pay it? Or when you pressured me to fund Tara's boutique knowing it was doomed? Or when you, Dad, took out loans in my name for your brewery, then gambled the profits away?" Victor's face reddened, but he raised a hand, his voice smooth. "Sarah, let's not air dirty laundry. We're here to move forward." "No," Sarah said, her eyes locking on his. "We're here for the truth. I'm done being your safety net. And if you try to touch the trust again, you'll lose half of it to charity." "That's not a threat. It's Grandma's promise." Tara finally spoke, her voice small. "Sarah, please. We didn't mean to hurt you. We need help." Sarah turned to her sister, her expression softening but firm. "I've helped enough, Tara. It's time you figure out how to stand on your own." Clara's eyes darted around the room, seeking allies, but Uncle Ray stared at his shoes, Aunt Linda clutched her purse, and Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear. "You'll regret this, Sarah," Clara said, her voice low. "You're tearing us apart." Sarah shook her head, her voice steady. "You tore us apart when you decided my loyalty was a blank check. This meeting is over." She opened the door, the cool evening air rushing in. One by one, her family filed out, their silence louder than any argument. Clara paused at the threshold, her eyes burning, but Sarah met her gaze without flinching. The door closed and the condo was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It was hers. 2 days later, Sarah sat across from Victor at a quiet cafe in Pioneer Square, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and mismatched chairs. She'd asked to meet him alone. No Clara, no Tara. The thick envelope on the table between them held proof of her family's financial misdeeds, compiled by Evelyn's meticulous records and Arthur Klein's research. Victor arrived 10 minutes late, his red tie replaced by a rumpled sweater, his charm dulled by fatigue. "Sorry, traffic," he said, sliding into the chair. "Thanks for meeting me, Sarah." She nodded, her expression neutral. "I didn't ask you here to reconnect. I need to be clear about a few things." She slid the envelope toward him, her voice calm but unyielding. "These are documents. Loans you took out in my name, credit cards Mom drained from my student account, transfers you claimed were for Tara's emergencies that ended up in Mom's personal account in Oregon." Victor's smile faltered, his eyes flicking to the envelope. "You've got it all wrong, Sarah. It was for the family. Everyone does this." "Do they?" Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady. "When I was 22, I worked 2 jobs to pay off a $10,000 0-cents credit card debt you opened in my name. You were in Vegas, Dad, betting on blackjack, and when Mom said Tara needed $8, 0 cents for a car accident, I sent it. 2 days later, she bought a used BMW. I have the bank statements, the receipts, even a recorded call between Mom and the dealer. Grandma kept everything." Victor's face froze, his hands gripping the table. "Where did you get this?" "Evelyn," Sarah said simply. "She knew who you were, and now I do too." She slid a single sheet across the table, a summary of the trust's protection clause. "If you or Mom try to touch the trust again, I'll file charges. I have enough to go to the IRS or the Financial Crimes Unit. And if you're thinking of hiring a lawyer to challenge the will, know this: any legal dispute triggers the clause, and half the assets go to charity." Victor leaned back, wiping his face, his composure crumbling. "What do you want, Sarah?" "Not money, not an apology." She crossed her arms. "Stop. No more calls begging for cash. No more fake emergencies. No more accidental account numbers from Tara. And if you're smart, you'll tell Mom to back off." He opened his mouth, but Sarah cut him off. "One more thing. I know you're looking for another lawyer. Don't. You taught me chess, remember? Sacrifice the pawn to protect the queen. You chose the wrong piece this time." She stood, gathering her documents, and walked out without looking back. The cafe's warmth faded into the cool drizzle of Pioneer Square, but Sarah's steps were light, her heart unburdened. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her life. A week later, Sarah stood in the top-floor office of Evelyn and Pierce, a sleek space overlooking the Puget Sound. The nameplate on the desk read Sarah Whitaker, CEO, a title she'd assumed after a unanimous board vote, spurred by Evelyn's notarized transfer of ownership. The office was unchanged from her grandmother's days, save for one addition, a painting of a Maine lighthouse, Evelyn's favorite, hung where Victor's portrait once stood. Taking over wasn't just a promotion, it was a declaration. Sarah had spent years as the family's accountant, cleaning up their messes. Now she was leading the firm her grandmother had built, a legacy of integrity and independence. But Sarah's vision went beyond profit. At her first board meeting, she proposed the Evelyn Pierce Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to financial education for youth and counseling for those manipulated by family. She pledged 20% of the firm's annual profits, a move that raised eyebrows but passed with quiet respect. The foundation's launch was set for next month, but Sarah was already planning its first seminar, recognizing financial abuse in families. She wanted it to be a beacon for others like her, trapped by guilt and duty. As she reviewed the proposal at her desk, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, it's Mom. Dad's in the hospital, heart issue. We need to talk." Sarah stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button. Clara's timing was no coincidence. She typed, "Friday, 3:00 p.m., my office. No warmth, no promises, just clarity." Friday afternoon, Clara and Victor arrived at Evelyn and Pierce, their polished exteriors frayed. Clara's makeup couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes, and Victor, gaunt from his recent hospitalization, leaned on a cane. Sarah sat behind her desk, 2 envelopes before her, her expression calm but resolute. "We're not here to ask for money," Clara began, her voice softer than usual. "We just want to hear from you, Sarah. Clearly." Sarah nodded, her hands folded. "I'm not shutting you out forever, but I can't be the family's ATM anymore." She slid the envelopes forward. "These are lists, financial counseling centers, and a treatment program for gambling and compulsive spending. I'll pay for them if you're serious about change, but I won't write another check to patch your bad decisions." Clara hesitated, her eyes searching Sarah's face. "Do you think we're terrible people?" Sarah shook her head, her voice gentle but firm. "I think you never learned boundaries, and you never let me learn mine. That stops now." Victor spoke, his voice hoarse. "I messed up, Sarah. Not once, too many times. But seeing you here in charge, maybe Evelyn knew what she was doing." Sarah didn't respond, not because she wasn't moved, but because she'd learned not to build her future on remorse. They left quietly, no hugs, no demands. As the door closed, Sarah felt a weight lift, not just from the meeting, but from years of carrying their burdens. That evening, Sarah stood at the Foundation's temporary office, a rented space in Fremont filled with folding chairs and eager college students setting up for the first seminar. She lingered in the back, unnoticed, watching volunteers arrange handouts. Mia arrived, carrying 2 bubble teas, her grin infectious. "Word is Tara's younger cousins signed up to volunteer," Mia said, handing Sarah a drink. Sarah smiled. "Good. Maybe the next generation has a chance." She took a sip, then pulled out a draft for the Foundation's website. "What should we put under About Us?" Mia tilted her head, thinking. Sarah wrote, "We believe family should never be a place where you fear your finances. Real love doesn't come with a price tag." Mia nodded, her eyes bright. "Perfect. Evelyn would be proud." Sarah looked out the window, where Fremont's quirky streetlights glowed against the dusk. For the first time in years, she felt no tug-of-war between guilt and gratitude. She was free, not just from her family's demands, but from the need to prove her worth. The legacy wasn't the trust, or the firm, or even the foundation. It was her choice to live authentically, on her terms. As the seminar began, Sarah slipped into a back row, listening as a speaker shared her own story of escaping financial abuse. The room was quiet, the students leaning forward, and Sarah felt a swell of purpose. This was her beginning, and no one could take it away. The Fremont neighborhood buzzed with early winter energy, its quirky streetlights casting a warm glow over the cobblestone sidewalks. Inside the rented office of the Evelyn Pierce Foundation, Sarah Whitaker stood at a podium, her hands steady on a stack of note cards. The room was packed with college students, community organizers, and a few curious locals, all gathered for the Foundation's inaugural seminar, Recognizing Financial Abuse in Family. The folding chairs were filled, and latecomers leaned against the walls, their faces a mix of anticipation and quiet resolve. Sarah, now 30 and the newly minted CEO of Evelyn and Pierce, felt the weight of their attention, but it was a weight she carried with pride. Her navy blazer was swapped for a soft green sweater, a nod to the approachable tone she wanted to set. The past month had been a whirlwind, taking over her grandmother's investment firm, launching the foundation, and setting firm boundaries with her family. Yet here, in this modest space with its mismatched rugs and steaming coffee urn, Sarah felt more at home than she ever had in her parents' lakeside mansion. This was her legacy, not just Evelyn's trust, but a mission to empower others to break free from the chains of guilt and manipulation. She cleared her throat, her voice steady as she began. "My name is Sarah Whitaker, and I used to think family meant giving everything, your money, your time, your peace, without question. I was wrong." The room was silent, every eye on her. I spent years as my family's bottomless wallet, paying off debts, covering bills, believing it was my duty. But real family doesn't demand your sacrifice. Real family lifts you up." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, landing on a young woman in the front row, her notebook open, her expression raw. Sarah recognized that look, the weight of unspoken burdens. "If you're here," she continued, "you might know what it's like to feel trapped by love. But you're not selfish for choosing yourself. You're brave." The seminar unfolded with stories from guest speakers, survivors of financial abuse who'd found freedom, and practical advice on setting boundaries. Sarah stepped back, letting the experts shine, but her presence anchored the room. She was no longer just the reliable one. She was a leader, a beacon for those lost in the same fog she'd escaped. As the event wrapped, a familiar figure slipped into the back row. Tara, her younger sister, her platinum highlights tucked under a beanie. Sarah's heart skipped, but she kept her composure, nodding to Mia Delgado, who was handing out resource packets nearby. Tara hadn't been invited, but her presence wasn't a surprise. Word of the foundation's launch had spread, and Sarah had heard whispers that Tara's younger cousin Lily had signed up to volunteer. Change, it seemed, was creeping into the Whitaker family, whether Clara and Victor liked it or not. After the seminar, Sarah and Mia retreated to a corner of the office, sipping bubble teas Mia had grabbed from a nearby shop. The room was quiet now, the volunteers tidying up, their laughter a soft backdrop. Tara lingered by the door, hesitating until Sarah caught her eye and nodded her over. "Hey," Tara said, her voice small, her hands stuffed in her jacket pockets. I didn't know if I should come." "You're here," Sarah said, her tone neutral but not cold. "That's a start." Tara shifted, her eyes darting to the floor. "I saw the flyer for this. Lily kept talking about it, and I wanted to see what you were doing." She paused, then met Sarah's gaze. "I'm sorry, Sarah, for the boutique, for the money, for everything. I didn't get it back then. I do now." Sarah studied her sister, searching for the performative guilt she'd seen so often. But Tara's face was open, raw, her usual defiance gone. "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. "But apologies don't erase the past. If you mean it, show it. Start with yourself." Tara nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm trying. I got a job. Nothing fancy, just a barista gig. And I'm saving up to pay you back, even if it takes years." Sarah's chest tightened, not with anger, but with a flicker of hope. "Keep going, Tara. Not for me, for you." As Tara left, Mia nudged Sarah's shoulder. "That was big. You okay?" "Yeah," Sarah said, exhaling. "It's not forgiveness yet, but it's something." Mia grinned, holding up her bubble tea. "To new beginnings." Sarah clinked her cup against Mia's, the sweet mango flavor grounding her. "To new beginnings." The next morning, Sarah sat in her office at Evelyn and Pierce, the Puget Sound sparkling beyond the windows, the main lighthouse painting, a gift from Evelyn, hung on the wall, its soft colors a reminder of her grandmother's strength. Her desk was cluttered with foundation proposals, seminar schedules, and a framed photo from the launch, Sarah and Mia surrounded by volunteers, their smiles wide and unguarded. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Clara and Victor stood in the doorway, their polished exteriors softened by time and consequence. Clara's makeup was understated, her eyes tired but clear. Victor, still recovering from his heart scare, leaned lightly on his cane, his face etched with lines Sarah hadn't noticed before. "May we come in?" Clara asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. Sarah gestured to the chairs across her desk. "Sit." They settled in, the silence heavy but not hostile. Victor spoke first, his voice low. We've been thinking about what you said, Sarah, about boundaries, about everything. We started the counseling program you sent us. Clara nodded, her hands folded tightly. It's not easy admitting we were wrong. I spent so long thinking I was protecting the family, but I was hurting you. I see that now. Sarah listened, her expression calm, her heart a tangle of caution and hope. She'd waited years for words like these, but she'd learned not to trust them blindly. I'm glad you're trying, she said, but this isn't about fixing the past. It's about moving forward, separately, until trust is earned. Victor's eyes glistened, but he nodded. You're right. Seeing you here, leading this company, this foundation, Evelyn chose well. Clara reached into her purse, pulling out a small envelope. This isn't much, but it's a start. She slid it across the desk. A check for $1,000, 0 cents, made out to the Evelyn Pierce Foundation. We sold some things. It's not repayment, but it's something. Sarah took the envelope, her fingers brushing the paper. Thank you, she said, her voice steady. The foundation will put it to good use. They stood to leave, and for the first time there was no plea, no hidden agenda. Clara paused at the door, her eyes soft. We're proud of you, Sarah, even if we don't deserve to say it. Sarah didn't respond, but as the door closed, she felt a quiet release, like a knot untying. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she was ready to let go of the guilt, the anger, the need to prove herself. She was enough. That evening, Sarah stood on the balcony of her condo, the Seattle skyline a tapestry of lights against the dusk. The air was crisp, scented with rain and possibility, and she held a letter she'd found in Evelyn's files, one never meant for public eyes. Written in her grandmother's elegant script, it read, Dear Sarah, if the day comes when you must choose between family and yourself, choose yourself. Real family doesn't ask you to lose who you are. Walk toward peace and know you're worthy of it. Sarah folded the letter, tucking it into her pocket. Peace wasn't something she'd been given. It was something she'd built, brick by brick, through every boundary set, every truth spoken. The Evelyn Pierce Foundation was thriving, its seminars booked through spring, its mission resonating with thousands. Evelyn and Pierce was stronger than ever, its reputation bolstered by Sarah's leadership, and her family slowly was finding their own paths, not because she'd saved them, but because she'd shown them change was possible. Mia joined her on the balcony, 2 glasses of Pinot Noir in hand. You did it, she said, handing Sarah a glass. You turned their game into your legacy. Sarah smiled, clinking her glass against Mia's. We did it. Couldn't have gotten here without you. Mia laughed, her curls catching the breeze. Don't get sappy on me, Whitaker. But yeah, we're a damn good team. They stood in companionable silence, the city humming below. Sarah thought of the young woman from the seminar, the one with the notebook who'd approached her afterward to say, You gave me hope. She thought of Tara's tentative steps, of Clara and Victor's check, of Evelyn's letter, and she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that she didn't need anyone's permission to be happy. As the stars emerged above Seattle, Sarah raised her glass to the sky, a silent toast to Evelyn, to herself, to the life she'd claimed. The reliable one was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth, who built bridges not from duty, but from love for others and, at last, for herself.